Welcome to the Creative Life Story Work podcast, your regular dose of life story work inspiration. Every month, we bring you life story work ideas, tools, and honest insights from a range of perspectives. Stay connected to the latest thinking in life story work as we talk to people with lived experience, practitioners, local authorities, carers, and people who are shaping the way you help care-experienced children and young people make sense of their past and build a brighter future. Today, we are focusing on creative relational activities you can use with children and young people within an asylum or refugee context. And I'm delighted to welcome to our podcast studio Dr. Karen Treisman. Karen is a highly specialist clinical psychologist who has worked in the National Health System and Children's Services. Karen has also worked cross-culturally in both Africa and Asia, with groups ranging from former child soldiers to survivors of the Rwandan genocide. And she's also the author of 10 books, including the best-selling book, A Therapeutic Treasure Box. Hello, Karen, and welcome to our podcast studio today.
Hi, Dawn. So fab to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So for listeners who may be new to your work, how would you describe creative life story work in simple terms?
I think for me, life story conversations is so much about the meaning making and sense making of someone's experiences and their journey and their narratives, and not just to have had events, but actually to be able to think about how has this shaped or influenced, or what does this mean, or what feelings do I have around that. A more textured, multi-storied way of thinking about things. And I think when you think about the creative side, it's not just having a conversation or reading a book that has someone's birth certificate in it, but actually being able to have creative, interactive, direct work activities where in those conversations the child feels seen, heard, and that they matter, but that they're able to co-narrate and co-construct with an adult bearing witness and alongside, and that it's an embodied, enriched sensory experience.
Thank you. And there in that answer, you're emphasising a creative approach. Why is this especially important in asylum and refugee contexts?
Hugely, hugely, hugely important. Lots of reasons for that. Firstly, as we know, where English might be a second language, that creative and expressive approaches are incredibly helpful for children in that way. But particularly from different cultures where various people might express or communicate through storytelling or plays or drumming. But also, what creative approaches allow is a different way to express or encode, where sometimes it's really hard to do that with words. Some people, words might be scary or stigmatized or overwhelming or too much, or there's all of those things. Whereas if people can express that through a drawing or through a sculpt or through a collage, that might be less threatening, more playful, more fun. So yeah, I mean, many, many more reasons, but those are some of them.
And how does this way of working in life story work, I'm thinking about supporting identity of belonging for young people who may have experienced displacement?
I think it's incredibly important because, as you said, displacement can lead to such fragmentation, such a sense of being chronically misunderstood, a sense of disconnection, a sense of feeling misrepresented. And so, life story conversations and activities can support someone to start to have meaning making and sense making, have an opportunity to be able to express their hopes, fears, wishes, to be able to start to connect the dots, to be able to create a golden thread through the past, the present, and the future, but also to do it in the context of with an adult who I hope is going to be fully attuned and present and alongside and bearing witness so that they feel validated. And I guess one of the things that can happen so much is in a refugee and asylum seeking context, it often is a really indignified approach. It's often dehumanizing. And so there's something rehumanizing or about integrity and dignity and being more than a legal status or a statistic, and being able to have those opportunities to connect with your identity, to share that, and to also have an opportunity to discover it, particularly for kids who often have been put in a box or been seen as you're from Afghanistan or you've come over here in that context. Life story conversations give an opportunity of your passions, your hobbies, your interests, that, all of those different kind of parts and layers of people.
And what advice would you give to some practitioners who feel like they're not creative to even begin these conversations?
Oh, I love that. And you know what? Just to really acknowledge, I think so many people have had tricky experiences at art in school where, there was so technical or theory, or they go down a time hole or think that couldn't go up on the, wall, or it makes people feel self-conscious. So I think many, many people can sometimes struggle with that. What I would say is a few things. Firstly, creativity doesn't need to be, something that's going to go up in the tape. Actually, the messiness and the humanness, it could be stickers on a piece of paper. It could be a stick drawing. It could be lollipop sticks. So it's about how we leave someone feeling. And if people, it's the humanness, and actually sometimes that can be really helpful for the kid to be like, it doesn't need to be perfect, and it can be messy and it can be muddy and we can experiment. It's how we leave someone feeling. But creativity doesn't just need to be in arts and crafts. It can be in music. It can be through digital aspects. It could be through sport. It could be through creative thinking. And for people who it might not be their default mode, that's why there's resources out there like My Books and Cards and Pinterest and Google, that we can think about, well, how might we take that? But we also know that if you've got a kid who's into Harry Potter, or you've got a kid who's interested in Minecraft, if you can find a way to harness that, they're going to be far more likely to engage and be present, and to feel that you're working to be alongside them, and that they're being treated as a unique individual and not copying and pasting or a one size fits all. And it comes out in different ways. It's not something you have or don't have. It's finding a way to connect, in essence.
And what are some of the common, or what are some of the misconceptions that practitioners might have when they begin to work with children and young people within an asylum or refugee context?
There's a lot of different misconceptions. I think, firstly, people sometimes feel, well, I can't do the work if someone's in limbo. I think sometimes there can be a misconception that you can't do the work if you have to work with an interpreter. I think there sometimes can be a sense of, I'm going to do more harm, which, we do need to be careful and ethical and sensitive around. I think sometimes there's a sense that everything needs to be around the trauma, as opposed to actually, what happened before the journey, what continues. I think there can be huge cultural biases which shift and change depending on the age or stage, or what country the person's been on. I think people can feel scared or unfamiliar if they're working with someone and they haven't necessarily had the experience of that country, what they might have seen on social media. There might be aspects around gender roles. There's different elements about bringing sometimes spirituality or religion. Yeah, there's a lot of different aspects or elements that come in, or that they need to know every minutiae of the legal system and the legal definitions, which, there might be some useful bridging material, but people don't need to be an expert in law to be able to connect or to be present.
Thank you. Let's go to a break so you can hear about our Creative Life Story Work membership offer. One of the methods that you've written about is the idea of name journeys, exploring a name, exploring what a name can reveal about a young person's story. Would you like to say a bit about that?
Yeah, so in the training, we're going to do an activity or an exercise around names, and I'm going to do it in quite a careful way, intentionally, because I want people to get a sense of how important it is to support someone to be able to pass or opt out or have a brain break. And there'll be lots of choices within the activity. But I think what we know is names can be a really powerful entry point, particularly within an asylum seeking refugee context, because often there are names that might have lots of cultural meaning. There might be links to ancestors. There might be huge amounts of particular family connections around pride. But also there can be names that within the UK people have mispronounced or have abbreviated or that people have shortened. And so actually, sometimes an entry point to really explore about identity, and we're going to talk about different ways you can use names, from, nature names, making names out of nature materials, through to acronyms about names, through to how do you like to be called, through to, do you know the story or the history or the meaning about your name, can be a really helpful, powerful way to connect, but also can be a really illuminating experience. And it might be about them, it might be about a family member, but if we think about names, we can have so many different experiences with names. Have we changed our name? Have we been bullied about our name? Do we have pride of our name? Were we named after someone? There's so many different layers. And so I wanted to give people an experience of how to tread carefully and trace the edges and not just dive in, but actually how just something that sounds simple like a name could lead to us to lots of beautiful, enriching, exploring discoveries and activities within a life story conversation.
And lovely that everybody can do that as well.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
go off.
And it's a really powerful activity that you could use with anyone, and the ideas about how to do it carefully apply. But I think particularly with this context, it's been one of the most beautiful activities that's led me to so many interesting, expanding conversations. So I wanted to share it with people a little bit.
Lovely. So later this year in September, you're going to be delivering a live classroom for us on using creative relational activities with children and young people within an asylum or refugee context. What do you hope that anybody who participates in that session will take away from their experience with you?
I hope the session, because it's a really sort of creative session, I hope that people will leave with more confidence. I hope that people will leave with a treasure box of different ideas that they might apply. And I hope that people will leave with a understanding of the power that creative activities can have, but how they might need to do them with care or consciously, so that we don't activate, or that we're able to tweak or adapt things for a different context. Because as we know, there's not a one size fits all.
Thank you. And my final question, if there's one mindset shift that you'd love people listening to this podcast to leave with, what would that be?
Probably in this particular setting, there's so many myths and negative media portrayals and narratives, and there's so much sensationalization and glamorization and adultification of children in an asylum-seeking and refugee context, and it can be quite a thorny, emotive, heightened area. So I think to keep children first and human first would be a huge message. And see a child differently and you see a different child. See a situation differently and you see a different situation. If we're able to really be curious and hold these children with care and compassion, and to think about the power of supporting them to feel seen and how that can contribute to their sense of identity and belonging, that would be a huge aspect and thing to do. And life story work is a really beautiful possibility to do in this particular context.
So we'll end on beautiful possibilities. Thank you very much, Karen, for our conversation today. As ever, a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Whether you're a foster carer, someone who has experience with the care system, or you work with children and young people, we hope this episode has given you an insight into how we can make life story work better for young people and how you can use it in your own practice. You can find out more about Creative Life Story Work on our website, creativelifestorywork.com, and you can find us on LinkedIn at Creative Life Story Work. Please do get in touch there with any comments or questions, as we'd love to hear from you. And if your podcast app allows you, please do leave us a review, as it really helps others to find our show. So until next month, bye for now.